Hi, it's Jared from Strongroots Farm. Welcome back to the farm. Today we're going to be talking about how can you get a higher quality beef for your family. Now, whether you just are looking where to buy it, where can we find a farmer to get good beef? Where can we purchase, at what stores can we purchase good beef for you and your family? Or you're looking to start a farm or a homestead kind of like what we have, how can you do it? Whether it's on a half acre or 100 acres, I'm going to cover all that in this video. I'm going to give you multiple ways that you can raise higher quality beef than you can typically get at your local grocery store. Stick around, I'll take you through it all. Welcome back to the channel. Thanks for joining us. So recently I had a comment from, I'll put it up here on the screen, from a guy named John, and it was on one of our cattle videos, and he was talking about how he does things basically a lot different than us. And he's just looking to raise beef for his family, just looking to get something better than, we'll say, a big box store. He said something else. I don't want to get sued there, but he's just looking to provide better beef for his family. Consequently, down in the comments, John got beat up a little bit by some of my viewers, and I appreciate always my viewers who, one, come to my defense or comment on my videos, but I wasn't disrespecting in any way. John wasn't disrespecting me. I didn't take it that way. And so today I saw his comment, and it sparked this video. There's a lot of people that don't raise beef the way we do, or don't even know where to get quality beef. And so today we're gonna answer that question. We're gonna have to go inside. They're combining some big ag soybeans over here, which is good. Getting the stuff out of the fields. So we'll go inside the shop, answer these things, but the first way is obviously buy from a store, okay? You can buy quality beef from your local grocery store. There's just some things you have to pay attention to. First thing you should know is that 95 or 98% of all beef in any local grocery store, whether it's a Whole Foods, a Walmart, Kroger, Publix, whatever it would be, wherever you shop, Piggly Wiggly, right? It's grain fed. It's a big ag grain fed method model. And if that's what you want, it's fine. But that's typically what most of the meat is getting. The problem comes is that not all the meat even comes from our country. America, if you're watching from another country. Not all the meat comes from here. They ship in meat from other countries because it's cheaper. And there's been, if you watch politics, there's been arguments about country of origin labeling. So my best advice for you is understand USDA labeling. If you're gonna buy from a grocery store, you have to understand what grass-fed means, what organic is, what is naturally raised. Is naturally raised any different? And I really love the term farm raised. Well, where else would you raise a cow? On the moon? Are they moon raised cows? So with that, you have to understand what these labels mean, what it actually means, and how strenuous is it for me, the farmer, to say what I need to say to get that label, but not actually do it. So with grass fed, all I have to do is sign a piece of paper that I didn't feed them any grain. I haven't had one inspection for grass-fed only. Now we do that, we follow a strict regimen here, higher than the organic standards. We're not organic certified because it doesn't help us. And nobody comes to really look and make sure we're doing the right things. They just take their fee so I can get the stamp. So obviously as a farmer, I'm a little bit bitter about how well this stuff is policed. It's not policed very well, which has brought about a certain disadvantage to farmers who do certain things, who are doing things right. And it's also brought in some negativity towards you, the consumer, who are trying to buy from a local grocery store because you don't know what you can trust. It says this on the label, but can you really trust it? And it's brought about some distrust. So now we look to other methods of finding beef outside of the grocery store. One note on this, I will tell you, beef as high as quality as our grass-fed, 100% grass-fed natural raised beef here on our farm. Beef this quality is sold at Walmart, Jungle Gyms, Kroger. They have people like me that sell to the market, and that beef can and does end up in a grocery store. But how do you select from that to just a scraggly old dairy cow that somebody just got rid of at the market? You don't know once it's cut up. And so that has brought about this discourse. So now let's go to the next step. You say, okay, I want to go better than a grocery store. What's the next step? Next step would be to decide, first off, what type of beef you want by educating yourself on what is best for you and your family. But we'll talk about that. So first, we have 100% grass-fed. 100% grass-fed is leaner beef. It has more omega-3s. It is higher nutrient density. It typically has less chemicals. Some people who do 100% grass-fed don't vaccinate or don't give any antibiotics, so it'll say antibiotic-free. And a lot of this meat is pretty good, and you can find it at Whole Foods. You can find it at Kroger. It will say grass-fed. It's just, can you trust it? So to find a local 100% grass-fed farmer, if that's what you want, we have several here in our area. So Southern Ohio, if you're in Brown County, we've got Daniel up in almost towards Fayetteville at Semper Grazing Ranch. Jeremy Boswell is in Amelia at Emmett Ridge Farms. I'll post this Erie Valley right here. They do a great job selling grass-fed beef as well as us. And there are some that will ship, like Erie Valley ships to you if you want to order from them and ship. So let's talk about some other ways of beef, and then I'm going to tell you how you get connected with these farmers. Now, if you're not sold on the 100% grass-fed, and I don't think you have to be, it's just what we do. If you want a super fatty, you want to put it on charcoal, and it gets really crispy, and it still stays juicy, grain-fed beef, you need to find a local farmer like the Bollanders. So the Bollanders are here in our area, and you can go right to their farm and purchase wonderful grain-fed beef. Now their cows and their calves are predominantly on pasture. They have plenty of room to roam. They're not a confinement operation necessarily. They don't keep them pinned up in barns all the time. You can see the animals that your beef is coming from right on your farm. Aubrey and Adam are wonderful people, and they sell right from their farm. So you can find a farmer like Aubrey and Adam to buy from a local farm grain-fed beef. Next, you can buy from a co-op, and I'll put the little symbol up here for our local co-op here in Georgetown, Ohio, is Buckeye Valley Co-op. Now, a co-op is typically, has a lot of different terms depending on where you're at, but typically it's a group of farmers. Here, I think it's three. You have the Netherows and the Hamiltons and the Parkers. They have this Buckeye Valley Beef Cooperative, and you can buy beef from these three farms that work together, and it's typically grain-fed. It'll be marked grass-fed if they have grass-fed, but you can buy from a local beef cooperative. Okay, so these are kind of three different methods. You can find a local grass-fed farmer, you can find a farmer that they buy from their farm, whether it's grain-fed or grass-fed, you can find from a co-op. Sometimes farmers will have roadside stands, and then there's also farmers markets. So you can go and find beef at local farmers markets, get connected with that farmer, and then you don't have to go to the farmer's market every weekend once you make that connection. Buying your beef, you're looking to go to a farmer now if you're wanting to just buy it and not raise it, but how do you find these guys? So you can Google, and you can Google local farms, and it will help you. Now, if you're in the city and you think we have, we're lost in the middle of nowhere out here, it might surprise you, but we pretty much all have Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube channels. You can find somebody local in these methods, and that's what I would start. I would look at homeschooler groups, I would look at farming groups, just get connected and you'll start to find stuff. I do know that they sell beef on Craigslist, but I probably would stay away from that. You want to be able to connect one-on-one. Now, if you can find a guy on Craigslist and he'll let you come to his farm and see what you're buying, once you educate yourself on what you really want, that might also be a good method. So Google, there are some farm to table, there are some good websites. Herd Yard will be adding a method that you can buy beef on Herd Yard soon. That's an upcoming thing if you haven't seen Herd Yard before. But there's things like this that you'll get connected, and then you just talk to people and make connections, and you'll be able to find a local farmer that you can buy from. Now you've decided, we want to buy some land. We want to raise our own beef, and so we're not going to just buy it and save our time. We want to try to save a little bit of money and also raise it because we have some land. So if you are very small, and I'll tell you that I always recommend that you have 2 or 3 at the minimum calves because they are a herd animal. I recommend that all the time on my channel. But let's say you have an acre. And so we're going to start this plan with smallest to largest land. You have an acre. You don't have a lot of buildings. You might have a little shed, or you can buy a yard barn style shed for them to stay in the winter. And you're just looking to raise them. How could you do it that way? Kind of like John does. Well, you have to understand cattle need a few things. So the cattle are gonna need some sort of grass and hay, hay during the winter. You can feed hay all year round. You can put cows in a barn. Let's just spin around here. You can take my shop, which is not very nice yet. We're still working on this place. If you just had a barn, some kind of an old barn whatsoever, and you put them in a barn and gave them hay and gave them grain, you can raise beef that way, okay? If that's what you want to do. If you had an acre, you could have a shed and let them go out to pasture and come in and also eat hay and get their water and feed them grain. On a small acreage like 1 acre, you're probably going to need to feed some grain because you're bringing in nutrients that you don't have enough land yet to provide. So cattle need hay, grass. They're going to need some sort of protein, whether it's all from the pasture, like 100% grass-fed is, whether they get it from the hay, whether you get it from protein tubs and hay, or whether you get it from grain. And then you're going to need a clean source of water. So John said he hauls all this water, he hauls all of his hay. And so if you're a small guy and you're wanting to do this, but you don't really have a big tractor, you don't have a lot of land, what's the easiest way to do this? Well, first off, it's my recommendation based on cost that you do not feed square bale hay to cattle, mainly due to cost. It's going to cost you an arm and a leg. At the end, you're going to give up. It's not going to be worth it because you're going to be paying way more to feed that animal than you're actually going to get back from it financially. You should just find a local farmer. That would be my recommendation. But let's say you can get round bale hay from somebody, a neighbor, somebody around, and they will sell you one at a time. That would be the best case scenario. Buy you a little dump trailer, let them set the round bale in it, take it in, back it into your pen, dump the round bale out and cut the strings off, put a hay ring around it, which we can show you here in a bit. And now the cows have hay. They've got a little shed to go in, go to a local feed mill, buy some bagged cattle feed, get you a watering trough that you fill, and get a de-icer for the winter, and hopefully you have electricity somewhere that will keep it from freezing. And now you can raise beef. You only have an acre, but you're getting it done. And so some of the things you'll need is a little feeding trough like this. You can find them at auctions for less than $100. You can buy a new one at a farm store. You know, you'll pay $200 for something that size, maybe $150. A hay ring like this one out here is going to cost you $100 at used at an auction, up to $250 brand new. You can get some old pails like this to put water in. Now this is Limpy. Limpy has a limp, and she's had this since she was a baby. Her hip came out of socket and we've saved her, but she doesn't limp, or she doesn't walk so well out in the pasture with grass. So we've chosen to grain feed her, and you can do it in just this model. She has hay, she has a pasture over here and a pasture over here that she can go out to. She has a little shed over this way that you can see. It's actually a hog shed, but she can get in there right now. And then in the winter, she'll go in our barn, and you can raise them like this. You need good fence, you need clean water and feed, but you can raise your own beef just like this. All you have to do at the end, when she's as fat as you need her to be, is find a good butcher. Now, beef like this has less omega-3s. It is much fattier. It gets fattier if that's what you want, and she'll get that way. She will produce a great product for somebody else. And the only reason we're doing that, we traditionally don't feed any grain here. The only reason we're feeding her like this is just to be humane more than anything. I didn't want to take her to the yard and lose a lot of money and have them just send her as a calf to be slaughtered, or send her somewhere where she didn't do well, because it was my mistake. So I'm just going to treat her right and feed her grain, and she'll become some great beef for somebody who wants grain-fed beef. Well, let's say you have a few more acres, 8, 10 acres. You have some nice pastures, and you want to do it a little bit better than that, but you're okay with feeding grain. You really don't like a pen like that or feeding them necessarily in a barn. What you can do is kind of watch our channel and figure out about rotational grazing. And so anytime I'm keeping cows on pasture or cattle on pasture, it's better to rotationally graze. You let them eat here for a while, then they eat over there, then they eat another spot. It keeps them healthier because it gets them away from parasites and pestilence, right? So they drop their manure grows flies and bugs. You move them away from that. There's parasites in the ground. And as long as you stay off of it for 30 to 60 days, they won't get sick. You don't have to give an antibiotic, and it helps them. And it also helps your grass to be more productive. So whether you're feeding grain or grass-fed, that's always good advice. So you can move these few calves that you have around your 5 to 10 acres. You can get a feed trough like you saw over there. You can move it with them. You can move water. You can haul water. And you can feed grain around 5% of their body weight is a lot of grain. So typically we only seed 1%. So if they weigh 500 pounds, you're feeding 5 pounds of grain per day while they're on this pasture. Now, cattle can eat up to 5% of their body weight in grain if they're locked into a barn. We just don't recommend that for people who are looking to get high quality beef, but they want the grain to kind of help. Does the grain really help, and what are the pros of grain? And I think it's kind of important to understand that. So you know what grain will do to the beef. It's gonna take out some nutrients because it's gonna come out them. It's gonna wash the omega-3s out, which you might have heard that. So it's less nutrient dense, but it produces a great product. But the other thing grain does is it covers up for, I say it covers up for sins, but it's not really a sin. It just covers up for mistakes and management of grass. If you're doing 100% grass-fed, you really have to be good at growing good pastures. Whereas if you're feeding grain and your pastures aren't doing so well, grain will help cover that up or take up the slack of what you're producing in grass. It will produce that in a product. It's also a good way to bring nutrients in because they're in bags and you can bring it in from a feed mill. You can bring in nutrients and the animals can get healthy and eat grain where your grass can't produce those nutrients. Another way to feed cattle that's kind of between grass-fed and grain-fed, which they have certified grass-fed with this, there is standards for this, is silage. So silage, it can be multiple different plants like hay. It can be any kind of a corn or a grain style product before the grain is harvestable. They take the plant, they chop it up. You can put it in round bales like we have over here that are wrapped in plastic, or you can put it in long tubes. It then is wet and it ferments and it turns into silage. It has all of the plants and nutrients in it. It has grain in it. And there are some certifiable ways to get grass-fed beef from silage. They'll feed them silage because the USDA rule is that you haven't fed grain in a harvestable state, whatever the term is that they use on their website there. So you can chop corn before it's ready to be harvested, turn it into silage. It can have high sugars, high protein, and it can make cattle fat. And I am not against silage. I think silage is a good thing. It's just there's a lot of different types of silage, so I'm not for all of them. But this haylage that we're making, we're fermenting good hay, wrapping it in plastic. It does add some things for cattle that help them. And so that is another thing that you could feed your animals, and you could get grass-fed with it, technically, or you could use it for your grain-fed cattle as well. Silage is another good, or can be a good product if you can buy it or make it yourself. Last way that I'm gonna recommend, I'll talk to you at the end here about some ways I wouldn't recommend, but it can be done differently than what I would recommend, is 100% grass-fed. So with 100% grass-fed, you're gonna need to educate yourself. There is a lot of education out there when it comes to pasture management, when it comes to raising good hay, growing the correct plants, rotating cattle, the right breeds of cattle. There's so many more factors that come into play to get good, high quality grass-fed beef. If you don't want to give antibiotics, if you don't want to vaccinate, and you want to get calves fat to make great fatty beef on grass, it takes work. It takes discipline and it takes knowledge. Now, is it harder than grain-fed? Well, not saying that. I'm not knocking grain-fed farmers. They have to raise the grain or they have to buy the grain. Right now, it's a good time to feed grain because commodity prices are very low. But grass just takes more management. Some people say it's cheaper because all they eat is grass and they don't have to buy the grain, but it also takes a lot longer in time. So if you weren't aware, when a calf is weaned, meaning it comes off its mom, it's no longer nursing, it can weigh 450 to 600 pounds. So that's what we call a weaned calf, and that's what I would recommend you buy, a freshly weaned calf to get started. From that point, if you have them on 100% grain in a barn, you can fatten that calf out in as short as 8 months on 100% grain, hay all the time, locked up in a barn or in a paddock, a feedlot, kind of like we had over there. If you let them out into pasture like we do, it'll take another couple months, maybe 1, maybe 2. So now you're at 10 months. to do 100% grass-fed. From that baby calf, you're looking at 14 months is the earliest I've ever done because it was a smaller framed animal. Most of the time, it takes me 1.5 years from weaning. We tend to butcher grass-fed calves, grass-fed steers and heifers at 24 to 28 weeks of age. That is a long time to get your beef. So whether that's a pro or a con for you, it takes longer on grass. It's a different product, but it takes longer. It costs less because we're just feeding grass. We're not buying in grain, buying in nutrients, but timing is sure slow. As we're in here checking out our pigs, there's a few things that people do that can be done and can work that I just won't recommend. It's just further than normal that I want to recommend, and that's feeding off products, feeding waste products to cattle. What are some of these products that we're talking about? Well, the first one and most common one is distiller's grain. And this is one I can actually get behind. I don't mind this one as much. Distiller's grain, think of a brewery. They have hops, they have barley and oats and wheat, whatever they make beer out of, right? And they cook the grain, they make the beer from it or the wort, and then they have the spent grain left over. So it's kind of like the bottom of the barrel of a vegetable soup for them, and they call it distiller's grain, and you can feed this to cattle. So like I said, it's pretty common to feed distiller's grain, and I can get behind this one. I'm okay with this waste product going into cattle. The other thing would be like corn stalks. So when they harvest corn, there will be corn stalks left over. Corn stalks is a natural grass product, you could say. I don't get behind corn stalks because there's a lot of chemicals in them. If you don't care so much about that, I think corn stalks are fine, but corn stalks are very low in nutrients and very low in protein. So it's basically a filler, and you have to feed grain with it in order to get them the nutrients that they need. So we don't feed corn stalks. But the byproducts here, the waste products, get worse. Pretty much any plant waste that comes from a factory can be fed to cattle. Some of the things I've heard of is nasty potato chips. So when Doritos, which is a corn product, right? A corn tortilla chip, corn tortillas, or a potato chip, so it comes from a potato, when they get burnt or they have a bad batch, they have waste. Some people collect these and feed these to cattle. I'm against this. I don't think this is the right thing we should be feeding cattle. It's not meant for cattle. It's not a cattle feed. Will they eat it? Will they grow? Yes. Is it cheap? Because it's free most of the time. It's a waste product. They just don't want it going to a landfill. Fine. People are feeding it. I don't recommend, but if you're doing it, it can be fed to cattle. Another one would be sugar products. So whether that be molasses, which is sometimes in feed, and as a natural molasses product, I'm okay with, but things that are made out of sugar and molasses, like somebody that around here feeds wasted gummy worms. So gummy worms, solid glucose, gelatin, all the dyes, all the other stuff, the sprinklings of whatever salt or whatever that's in there on it. It's a corn product because it's high fructose corn syrup, and it does have a starch and a sugar in it. It can be fed to cattle, but it's not what I would recommend. So do not feed this if you're asking for my recommendation. But can you do it, and have people done it, and do people do it? Yes. And this list goes on and on. Wasted bread, wasted baking goods, old cupcakes from donut factories and cupcake factories, and it goes on and on. People feed this stuff to their cattle because it's cheap sugar. They'll feed a protein. It's just a cheap product that fills the animal, makes them fat, and produces beef. And you can do it too if that's what you want to do. You're not going to get my recommendation or my stamp of approval, but it can be done. If you are disagreeing with this, if you think, oh, that is awful, I can't believe anybody would feed that stuff, this is kind of some of the stuff that ends up in your grocery store if you don't know what you're getting and what your label means. Now, all of these methods of raising cattle, the end result is beef, and you're gonna need to find a butcher wherever you're at locally. And you can look these up on websites and Google and Facebook, just like we can find people who are selling. So understand, there are many different ways to skin a cat, as they say, and there are many different ways with many different land needs, many different experiences that you can raise beef all of which will turn a higher quality than most of your grocery store products. Minus the guy who was feeding gummy worms. I think that's pretty disgusting. So I guess I need to explain what kind of beef ends up in the grocery store. What is the traditional big ag way of putting out beef to a grocery store? And so typically what happens is that cattle are raised on a cow-calf operation similar to ours, on grass. They drop calves. Calves get sold to a market. Calves are bought from a market and go to a stocker farm or feeder farm. They go at that farm and they're fed grain, whether it's in the pasture like some people raise them or in a barn, and they're fattened out to 800 or 900 pounds, and then they're sold back to the market. The cattle farmer that runs a stocker operation, he makes the money on adding weight on these animals. Like I say, it can be done with grass, it can be done with grass and grain and pasture, it can be done solely in a barn. And then typically these animals go down south, Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas, to large head, large corporate feedlots. These are, if you're afraid of beef and you've seen some of these documentaries, this is probably what you've seen. Ginormous pens on a ginormous farm, no grass, they're standing on dirt, they all have automatic waters, and there's cows just standing everywhere. They have about a 5% death rate, so I've read. And there's probably 1 million head on some of these farms, and they are fed grain, they are fed silage, some feed hay, and they're doing whatever they can do to cut costs to feed as many animals as possible as fast as they can. The grain that they feed these animals comes from from agricultural row crops all around our nation. Corn and soy are the #1 and #2 things made up in the cattle feed that goes into your large cattle feedlots. Next, when the cattle are ready, they get loaded onto semis and hauled to a large butcher facility. Smithfield, Cargill, whoever's running it, they butcher upwards of 1,000 head a day. Over 100 head of cattle every day go through a large facility like this. Cattle are unloaded, dunked into a water cleaning solution so they're all cleaned off. They're then butchered, sprayed with cleaners, kept in cool rooms while it hangs and air dries out, and then it is packaged and shipped out to the grocery store for consumers to buy. So when you look at that method, some of the agricultural ways of raising cattle are very similar. It's just done on a small family farm. And even little changes, little more open space, a little more fresh grass makes the beef higher quality, less chemicals, less hormones, less antibiotics, and a cleaner way of butchering it when it is time to butcher at a small custom butcher makes a world of a difference. Well, thanks for watching. This video was not meant to rag on one style or another and say one is better. We do a certain thing on our farm, but I am supporters of ways of raising beef in another manner. It was to show you that there are many, many different ways to raise beef, fed many different things, some acceptable to me, some are just a little too far that I'm not willing to drop and do those things. Is it wrong? Does it produce an unhealthy product? That's for you, the consumer, to decide. You have to educate yourself and make that decision. If you're deciding to raise your own, understand you don't have to do everything the way I say or any other YouTuber or any book says, because there are many different ways to raise better beef for your family. Now, earlier I told you about John because he sent this comment in my video and he kind of got beat up a little bit, like I said. And then later he said he wasn't going to be on my channel or watch my channel anymore because people were harassing him about a comment. So John, I hope you continue to watch. You inspired this video, man. I applaud you for trying to raise quality beef for your family, even if you do it differently than me, the way you explained that you were doing it. Hauling in hay, hauling in water, feeding a little bit of grain in the winter on small acreage of grass. You're doing a great job, man. Keep doing, keep getting better, keep producing beef for your family. Well, there you have it. I hope this video helped. I hope John keeps watching. I hope he got to see this video because it's mainly for him. And I hope it helped you make some decisions. You don't have to raise it yourself if you know what you're looking for. But in every method, whether you raise it yourself or whether you buy it, if you're the consumer, you need to put a little bit of effort in to educating yourself on what you want, or you're really tossing the dice there. The other thing about raising your own beef and having a small farm or a homestead is keeping up this way of life. Supporting, even if you're going to buy, supporting small local farmers. The less that animal has to travel, the better that beef will be, because there's less stress on the animal. And you're keeping this way of life a healthier way of eating. You, the consumer, have the power to change, to make a change in our country with your dollar and keep this way of lifestyle, this farming lifestyle going for us, even if you choose just to support us by buying it. Appreciate everybody watching. Sorry if the noise was bad in the video. Tried to get it done and hide in places where I couldn't hear the sound. Till next time, have a good one.
Please like the video and subscribe! Dad, seriously, that was like 5 years ago.